Welcome to this episode of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. We are here. If you're watching on video, you can see I'm back at home. This was like last spring when we recorded from my house, and our three students today are also at home. So we're recording during the week here that Emmaus High School closed down due to the number of COVID-19 cases. So everyone right now is learning from home. So it's creating another unique ninth grade experience for our students that are going to join us today. But they agreed to come on before the shutdown here for this couple day shutdown. So thanks for them for joining us. So we're joined by three awesome freshmen here. So we have Elizabeth Sammer and Molly Himes and Victoria Toto are here to join us to tell us all about their ninth grade years so far and what they hope to get out of the rest of their year. So thank you very much for joining us, ladies. They're all saying thank you. I reminded them before we started that this was the audio portion of the podcast, so they all needed to respond back. And I think they're all looking and waiting for each other to respond. So they all said hi. They're all smiling. If you're watching the video, you can see this, but we'll get them to respond to the questions here. So we always ask guests on for the first time to talk about their ninth grade experience. So adults, students, everybody else. So we just finished the first marking period. So why don't you talk to us about what your ninth grade experience has been like? So anyone can go first. When you first start talking for the first time, you might want to just identify who you are so people can hear your voice and learn who you are. So whoever wants to go first can just jump right on in.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Elizabeth.
All right. So, hi, my name is Elizabeth Samer. And so my ninth grade experience, it really started in like early July when I started cross country. So I met like a lot of people there and it was a lot of fun. We just had a really good time. So that was like the beginning of the summer. So I started, so then like I knew some people before I came into school. And it's been good. I came from another school. I did not come to middle school, so I've like met a couple people through cross country, which has been nice. And it's been really good.
Okay, so I'm going to ask before we jump into everybody else here. So cross country, they just ended their season a couple of days ago. I know they were, I think it was 5th in the state. I think, if I remember the number correctly, I think the girls varsity. Did you run in any of the meets with varsity or JV this year? Like, how did you do?
I did well. I didn't. So like they only brought a couple kids to the state tournament because of just like not having a lot of people. But I did run in varsity just like locally when we had the local meets.
Okay.
Against different schools in like the area locally.
Oh, cool. That's pretty cool though. So, and we'll hear from the other ladies as well too here, kind of to see what they were like. But one of the things that you mentioned is always something that's cool is when we have freshmen that are athletes in the beginning of the year, they get a chance to meet some people before they come in to start the school year off. So that's always a great way to kind of get started. So Molly or Victoria, how about you? What has your ninth grade experience been like?
Hi, my name's Molly Himes. I actually started in beginning of August with having sectionals for marching band, and then I went to school. So far for classes, it seems like a lot of the classes that are hard for me are like at semester 1, and then all my easier classes are semester 2.
And that's interesting too. When we've started talking to some students in the last couple of weeks, and they're mentioning like they have these weird split schedules where sometimes they have really hard semesters and sometimes they have really easy semesters. So Molly, you'll be a good person that when we talk a little bit later about strategies or things you've learned kind of going forward and how to prepare, that'll be great. So again, you were involved in marching band over the summer, so that gave you a heads up on coming in to meet people as well too. And we'll see what Victoria's, how her ninth grade experience has been before I ask a question that I've been thinking about here as our first two people responded. So Victoria, I have Victoria in class, so I see her every day. So I know how her science ninth grade experience has been going, but how's the rest of your ninth grade experience been?
It's been pretty weird, just like the back and forth, like we're in school for a little and then we're at home. So I think like that's pretty hard, especially from coming from middle school. It's like very different to start a new school, so it's hard to like get used to the school. But I think all of the teachers have been very like all my teachers that I have are very kind and like willing to like help with anything. So I think like that's good because then students know they can like reach out if they're like struggling.
And that's something too that we always talk about, is making sure like students feel comfortable reaching out for help and those kinds of things too. So, are you involved in anything here in the spring or in the fall, Victoria, like getting involved with anything in the school?
I am in No Place for Hate Club.
Oh, cool.
I'm one of the advisors, so I think that's like a pretty cool club because like anti-bullying and just spreading like kindness around the school. So I think that that's a great club to join, especially if you're looking for like a place to meet friends or just do activities. And I usually do theater. Like I've done that like most of my life, but I didn't do it this year because it's all virtual. But for the spring, hopefully it'll be in person.
All right. So thanks, Victoria, for answering, giving us a good background. No Place for Hate is a great club and organization. We did an episode last year of the podcast where No Place for Hate brought Dr. Mikey Fallon in as a speaker, and he's been in previously. And that was a really cool episode that we did with the members of No Place for Hate, and Mr. Harkness and Miss Larkin. We're all part of that. So that's a group that's been on the Ninth Grade Experience podcast before. And for you to be an officer in that, or I forget exactly what you said, an officer, that's pretty cool for a freshman to be, wanting to take on a leadership role in the organization like that. So that's pretty good stuff. So I wanted to come back and ask Elizabeth and Molly real fast, since we haven't had, I'm hoping to get some freshman football players on in the next couple of weeks, but what was it like for both of you to participate in an activity in the fall here with all the restrictions that we've had? Cross country is a little bit different because obviously you're just running against yourself, and like there are people around, but there's not really contact unless you all run into each other because there's a big pile up somewhere, but that usually doesn't happen. And then band, you've had to maintain the distance there with that kind of stuff. So what has your experience been like, Elizabeth or Molly, with like participating in an activity like those in the beginning of the school year here?
At least for cross country, we like at least we split up, like we were in our own groups, like just a couple people, and we run together at practice, everyone together. But then like at meets, it was a lot less. There was just one team against us, our team. So like, I mean, I this is our first year, so I don't really know how the other years went, but it was more difficult to just be running against a few kids. Like normally cross country would be a ton of kids, and there'd be a lot of kids to pass or like to just be around. So it wasn't like the same experience, but it was still a lot of fun.
And then Molly, how about you with the band and having the distance and do those kinds of things? Did you find any difficulties with that, or was it just kind of band as normal?
I kind of find it a little bit difficult because as a freshman, it's the first time going into marching band. So even though we've been playing instruments for a while, it's different with like having to memorize the music and where we go, and then like moving and playing at the same time. But then we also had all these restrictions of having to stay 6 feet apart and wear a mask. And then it was weird being in the stadiums because there was like barely anyone in there, and it was just like family. So it was like really weird just being in this quiet stadium.
Yeah, I would expect, as you're kind of coming up here to ninth grade and you're, excited to be part of the band and, Friday night football and those kinds of things. And then you start playing and there's literally like, you're basically playing to a huge empty stadium with the players and the parents, and that's pretty much about it. So it must have been weird. It's a unique one because, you're not competing necessarily like the people on the field, but you're still there the entire time. And you're using that as like a preparation for your competitions and stuff throughout the school year and those kinds of things as well too. So really interesting perspectives there about some of the activities and things that freshmen have been involved with here at the beginning of the year that might have been a little bit different than what they were expecting coming up. So you talked about like this new opportunity. I think all three of you have mentioned like the newness of it and the different challenges that you have dealt with in the school year here so far. So what have any of you or all three of you, what have you learned about yourself or kind of how you can adapt to different situations and challenges throughout the first 10, 11 weeks of school here. Is there something that you've learned that you're like, oh, I didn't realize I would be good at this, or something that I needed a little bit more work on, or like, what have you kind of learned about yourself as you've started your high school experience here?
I think something that like has been hard is like being independent, especially since like it's harder to reach out for help even though you could do it through like email or Schoology. It's just not the same as like walking up to a teacher and asking for help if you need something. So I think being independent is like something that I've had to adapt to and like get more used to and work things out more on my own. Even though I can still reach out, it's like, yeah, it's just like you have to like be able to sometimes answer your own questions or just think things through more.
Molly or Elizabeth, how about you? That's a really good, I like that, because I think a lot of students are struggling with that way of being independent and thinking about like, how do I tackle problems? And, you're so used to having people in the classroom with you. And we're seeing this, I think every teacher in the building that's working with ninth graders, or all students for that instance, are seeing those issues as well too. So Elizabeth or Molly, what have you kind of learned about yourselves this year, kind of thinking, oh, maybe I wasn't ready for this, or needed something that you've improved upon here at the beginning of the school year?
I have to agree with Victoria with being more independent. It's like in the school, there's like bells to like tell you when like class start and like that. But then at home, you don't really have those bells, and you have to watch the time. And also just like being a little bit more dependable on your parents or just your guardians. Just like it depends on what class is, but like for like science or tech ed classes, you might need to have a parent supervision or like a parent help rather than a teacher there for you.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting you say that about the supervision, because I know as a science teacher, we had to send out something at the beginning of the year. Now, Victoria knows we haven't had anybody do anything really dangerous yet, but we still needed to send that form out. I would assume with tech ed, do you have tech ed now, or did you have tech ed?
I have tech ed right now.
So that's one of those cooler classes in the building. It's kind of behind the wooden doors there, if you've been in the building at all, and it's kind of like set off from everything. It's really interesting, but it's unique because it's one of those classes that normally is very hands-on, very getting tinkering around with stuff. But I'm assuming that now it's kind of a lot different looking. But yeah, I don't know if they'll ask you to do stuff at home, but you have to have that supervision as well too. So yeah, that's an interesting one to kind of think about, is that maybe you do need a little bit of support at home. You've been trying to be more independent, but you still might need somebody around to make sure you don't like blow up the kitchen or something. I don't know what the kind of stuff, is it Mr. Ramson that you have?
I have Mr. Brawley or Mr. Anthony right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So you're probably doing like the STEM. I forget what that class is called, but that's cool. Yeah, that's a neat one. So Elizabeth, how about you? What have you learned or kind of developed in yourself here at the beginning of the school year that based on our current situation, that you've had to kind of develop maybe a little bit quicker than a normal freshman?
I definitely think that it's a lot harder to pay attention at home. Like, there's a lot more distractions and a lot more things to make it more difficult. So when we're at school, you're just focused on class and the teacher. But the atmosphere of our house is more distracting and a lot more difficult to like keep focus on. It's just easier to lose focus rather than when we're in school.
Mm-hmm. So, and this goes for any of the three of you here. So what are some things that you've kind of developed, or tips or strategies that you could give to other freshmen that are listening to, or parents of freshmen that are listening to? What are some things that the three of you have kind of learned or kind of adopted that you're doing that you've found to really be helpful in this, remote hybrid learning environment?
I think if you're like fully remote or the days you are remote, I think it's good to still like get up and get dressed and like go to a desk or a table or something, just to make it seem like a little more normal. Because like if you're just like sitting in bed or on the couch, it's easier to like like get more tired or not pay attention or just like sit on your phone. So I think that's something that has helped me just to like have a sense of like routine.
It's a great suggestion, the sense of routine. I think even going back to last spring, we suggested for students to not stay up all night long. We suggested that they, go to bed at normal time, wake up at normal times. And at the high school, you have to make sure that you're there at the 7:23. And I have Victoria at that 7:23. So she knows that, science is the first thing she's waking up for. So that's one of those things where, she knows what she's waking up for, and she's always wide awake. So we haven't had any issues with her falling asleep. And now I know why, because she's has a routine where she's getting up, she's getting dressed and at a desk and moving to where she needs to be. How about for you, Molly or Elizabeth, anything that you have developed here over the first couple weeks of school that have been good tips or strategies you can share with parents or students going forward that maybe they could implement into their daily routines?
I usually put my phone away or like out of the room. Because like in school, we aren't allowed to have it out of backpacks or like out in class. So I always like to put it out of the way so I don't get distracted by it. So if I get like a ding or like anything from it, I'm not tempted to go look at it during class.
And that's another really good example of something that, if we were in the regular building, you couldn't have your phone out. So that's a good strategy as well too. I've heard students doing that. I know I've been in some meetings with Mrs. Demchek, who is one of the ninth grade school counselors, who we'll have on, in the next couple of weeks here. She offers that as a suggestion, like removing the phone from your room or when you're doing your work there. So that's a really good one to add in there. So getting in a routine, getting up, acting like you're in school, moving the phone out of the room so you're not distracted. How about you, Elizabeth? Anything that you have done so far that has been a good strategy or tip that you would like to share to people that are listening?
I definitely think that taking breaks between classes are important. Like normally at school, you'd walk class to class. So getting up and walking around or getting a drink or something between class is definitely helpful for me to like restart each class and to start fresh.
Yeah, I like that one too. Like kind of giving yourself that little mental checkout. And, I like how you said the walking from class to class, because normally, if you're in the building at all, we have this year, we have like 10 minutes between classes. So we do have a little bit more time. But it's interesting you say that, because like even that like 5-minute walk, and you can't really meet up with people, but just that little bit of a break kind of does divide up the classes pretty neatly. So I like that. So 3 really good tips there from all of you kind of to, incorporate into your days, and hopefully that would help out a little bit with, if we're going to continue being remote, or even if we go back into the hybrid, how the learning is. I forgot to ask, but I know Victoria's been in the hybrid. How about for you, Elizabeth and Molly? Have you been in the hybrid, or have you been all remote the entire time?
I did hybrid as well as Victoria.
Okay. And how about you, Molly?
I also have been doing hybrid.
Okay, so let me ask all 3 of you this, and I asked this to people that were on last week that are the class officers, and at that point, only one of the 3 had been in school. What was, when you came into school for those couple weeks there, between when we were all remote and then now, what was school like for you, like physically in the building? Was it what you were expecting? Did you enjoy being here for it, or was it just like weird? I don't know. As a teacher perspective, I'm still, now that we're not there, it's kind of tougher, but it's like, I don't know. I don't know what I thought about it when I was there. It was kind of really interesting. So I'd like to hear some feedback from all of you as to what you thought the hybrid was like there for that 2-week stretch where we were doing it.
A lot of my classes have been weird because no one wants to talk. Everyone just sits down there and just stares straight front, not wanting to do anything.
And that has been one thing too. And I don't know what Victoria's opinion about the school has been, but Victoria's class as one of the 4 classes. Like I have a couple classes I teach, and different. Obviously, the A and the B, or however you want to divide the kids up. But Victoria's group that she was in the actual in the building with for science was actually really unique, because that group actually talked. They were laughing and joking, and I teach with Mr. Harkness, and we commented that it actually felt like what a quote unquote normal classroom was like a couple times, because it was like, that energy of ninth graders and just kind of doing that. So it's really interesting, Molly, that you comment that, your classes were all like everyone's sitting straight ahead and nobody's moving and nobody wants to talk. So how about, I know Victoria, I kind of stole maybe what you were going to say, but I just wanted to jump in there because I thought that was interesting. But Victoria or Elizabeth, how about you all for what your impressions of the hybrid were?
I think that class, like the science class, was definitely one of my favorite parts of hybrid, because that was the class that felt the most normal, because we had people to talk to, and like both you and Mr. Harkness are both very engaged like in like the students, and you guys talk to us, especially on Zoom. So that was like a good part of hybrid. I think the weirdest part was definitely lunch, because it's weird how like there's both the cafeteria and the gym, and I eat in the gym. So I think it's very weird because it's like on folding tables and everyone's so spread apart and no one really talks. So like normally the cafeteria is louder than that. So that's definitely been pretty awkward.
That is weird. Yeah, you're right. I've walked past the gym when they've had lunch in there, and it has been, you're right. It's really awkward to go work for it. It's just weird. It's like you walk past and you're expecting kids to be like doing like physical activities. And then you see these tables and people are the 6 feet apart in their distance and they're following all the rules. Like nobody's like not following the rules, but it's just, you're right. It's just weird. It was weird. And how about you, Elizabeth? Any impressions of the hybrid for you and what you kind of felt when you were there?
I definitely think some classes more than others are more engaged, and like it's definitely easier though at school to like be more engaged in class with other friends and teachers, because then at home everyone is just quiet, like as Molly said, just like looking right at the screen. But at school it's definitely better to like have a connection and just to like talk and enjoy the class.
Awesome. So yeah, so it's really interesting. I'm sure everyone kind of has the, people that are listening, whether they're freshmen or, even other grade levels, they're kind of all having the same experience of what hybrid is like. And, I don't think anyone is like super enthused by it. It's everyone, but nobody's like, it's like, it's terrible. So I think people are in these like weird middle ground for all of it. So we're up to our last question here. So before we kind of end here, Elizabeth and Molly and Victoria, thanks for taking the time here to join us and answer all the questions. And this question is going to be kind of hard because it's really hard to predict what's going to happen here. But we talked about what you hope for the rest of the school year. And who knows what that will look like. I think no matter what, we're going to continue on with school, whether it's remote, hybrid, whatever. I know, Victoria, you're involved in No Place for Hate, and Molly, you're still with the band, the marching band. And I don't know, Elizabeth, if you're an all year track person or just a cross country track person. So, what do you all hope for the remainder of your ninth grade year? And kind of what do you, by the end of it or at the end of it, what do you hope that you have kind of learned about yourselves or ninth grade, or what do you hope to get out of this wacky first year of high school for all of you?
Well, I also do basketball, and I hope that we can like keep playing and play other teams, and then also just like making new friends and meeting new people, and like doing different things in person rather than just on Zoom here, um, or even just like being in class like consistently, like having the same routine every day would be good.
Okay. So yeah, so basketball, my son who's in 7th grade is trying out for middle school basketball for the first time this year, if they have middle school basketball and if they're going to play. So we're still waiting on word for winter sports here. So I'm sure there are a lot of people in your same position here, Elizabeth, that are wondering what's going to happen with with the sports, and we have no idea. So, so Molly or Victoria, how about you all here as we kind of wind down? What are your hopes for the rest of your ninth grade year?
I kind of hope that like we can try to stay hybrid most of the time because I like just going in at least 2 or 3 days a week. And then I also hope that like I have Symphonic advanced semester 2, and that's indoors, and we're not allowed to play instruments indoors. So I'm hoping to somehow have some way we can like still practice our instruments, but also staying safe.
Cool. And then Victoria, how about you here?
I hope that just like the activities like clubs or sports can go back like to still doing in person. And like I'm in Bella Voce, which is like the women's choir here, so that's supposed to happen in the second semester. So I like hope we can at least sing in person and it's not like all through Zoom or have some sort of concert just to make it feel like normal. So I would hope for that to happen and just for everyone to be able to do their activities in some way.
Yeah, and I think what you all are saying is like what we're hearing from community members and even, teachers and everyone. We hope that there's some way that we can get back to some sense of normalcy as we kind of go through here, because there's so many things people are looking forward to, whether it's winter sports or band or concerts or other stuff like that hopefully we will be able to have this year. But again, we can't predict anything because when we were here the last time on the show, we didn't know that we would be going remote for a week, but here we are in the middle of that as well too. So thanks a lot to Elizabeth, Molly, and Victoria for joining us today, providing a little bit of insight to what the ninth grade year has been like for our freshmen here at Emmaus High School. Good luck for the rest of your school year, and thank you so much for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.